Good evening, Heart for the Community. Good evening, everybody out there on Facebook. Good evening, you who are watching by way of YouTube. We're back for another installment of the Heart for the Community interview series. And we have with us this evening Pastor Daniel Bowman, and we're so glad to have him. Welcome. Listen, if you're here with us now already, we want you to take a moment, call your friends, start a watch party, share the video, and let everybody know the Heart for the Community is on. And we want you to join in the conversation with Pastor Bowman. If you have questions or comments as we go along with the interview, please attach your questions and comments to the feed, and we'll certainly get to them. All right. If you have not had an opportunity to go to the Heart for the Community Initiative Facebook page and like and or follow, this will be a good time to do it. Also, if you'd like to follow me personally on my Facebook page, you can do the same. That way you can see when we're scheduling interviews just like this one. So with no further ado, hello, Pastor Bowman.
Hello,
Welcome.
sir. Good evening. Thank you for having
Wonderful. Thank you for accepting the interview request.
me. Yes, sir.
Sir, you are an interesting person with an interesting story. And I just want to give you a moment to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them something about yourself.
Yes, sir. I am an ordained pastor, currently between churches now. As far as serving, I work with families with children with autism, work to train them to help their students reach their full potential. Recently affiliated with the Knowledge Exchange, which is a tutoring service, nonprofit organization, a great organization, and just trying to work out my faith with fear and trembling before the Lord.
Oh, sir. That's what the sermon was about this morning.
It's always a daily walk for sure.
That's right. Trying to be the salt. And it's not always easy. Lord knows it's not.
No, it's not. Not in these times, that's for sure.
That's right. Pastor Bowman, where are you from? Tell us something about your background.
I grew up mostly in Virginia, mostly over in the Shenandoah Valley. Kind of moved all around different parts of Virginia, serving different places. Pretty much every summer found me somewhere else. I've worked in youth camps. I've been children's director, youth pastor, worked at boarding school, worked a lot in private education and a lot of the churches I was involved in. So just kind of a random background. Someone counted up one time all the different jobs I've had, and I think I'm somewhere in the 30s at this point. So I'm not one to sit still for long.
We see. It's so interesting that you work with children with autism. How did you get involved with that?
I started actually as a youth pastor. I started tutoring some of the kids. I was sitting in my office one day and I realized just the pastor and I were the only two in the building, 5-6 days out of the week. And I went up to him and I'm like, this doesn't feel right anymore. I think I need to be where the kids I'm supposed to minister to. I feel like I need to be where they are. And he said, well, where are they? I said, right now they're in the lunchroom. He said, well, go see if you can get in the lunchroom. So I went and was going over there for lunch, getting to know the ladies in the front office of one of the schools, or a couple of schools actually, and ended up volunteering to help out the football team and ended up tutoring for the football team. And then a young man joined our youth group who had some disabilities, and I ended up substitute teaching in his class. And from there, I ended up working with a couple different special needs populations, and then found Paragon Autism Services. That's who I work for currently. I work now as a training and services coordinator, helping families understand a little bit more about applied behavioral analysis, which is what we do, and helping those kids live up to their full potential.
That is awesome. Pastor Bowman, some of this audience does not know Heart for the Community, because the last time you and I were on the air together, we were on a different platform.
I see.
So
Okay.
This is their first time. And so some of this audience, some of their first time seeing you, some of them, they follow me everywhere. So they know exactly who you are.
As well they
I hope so. So what I wanted to introduce this part of you to the audience. Mm-hmm. You have a very interesting perspective and a drive when it comes to the current movement, this thing that's going on in our nation right now with racial inequality
Yes, sir.
and the racial unrest, and what the church's role ought to be in that.
Yes, sir.
And before I ask you a question, I kind of want to have you use your own words to
Okay.
kind of let our audience know where you stand in this, and how you came to that point of view.
Yes, sir. It's an honor and a privilege to stand with you, my brother, and all brothers and sisters, people of color. What has been happening for years and years, decades, centuries, people of color have been mistreated in America. It's still going on, some of it veiled, some of it not. I believe our call as members of the faith community is to see the image of God in each and every person, and to honor that, and to honor him by doing that. I believe it starts with teaching your kids. I've got 4 kids myself, and I'm really proud to see that they see color and they appreciate it and they respect it. It's How can you think that one day we'll get to heaven and it will just be one or the other? No, it's going to be all of us. Some of my fond memories, I think I mentioned last time, my father's a pastor as well. As a matter of fact, I am the 9th generation ordained pastor on my dad's side. And I remember him preaching in some black churches during the summer with the windows open and just standing room only. And you want to talk about a place where the Spirit of the Lord is, it's in worship there for sure. So to be able to worship in spirit and truth with any human being should be our goal. To be able to have just a rational, logical conversation, which we've lost so much of. And as you said earlier, in doing that walk, it becomes difficult to stay calm, to stay logical when so many emotions are in play right now. I want to be known as an ally to anyone that feels that they've known the love of God, but not the love of people like myself, whether that's as a Christian or as a white hetero man. I want people to know I'm here. My door is always open. I will help you. I will stand for you. I will defend you. And it goes back to a foundation in my faith. The other program I was telling you just a little bit, where I grew up, there were racist jokes being told. And my family grew up deeper in the South, and they grew up with the reality of servants that were treated as less. And I can say in some very difficult conversations I've had over the years, some very recently, I'm seeing my family grow from that, and that is a blessing. When you put grace into the story, it changes how you look at other people. You don't see the other, you see Christ, and you have to open your heart and open your mind. Dr. Cornel West said, if you want to hear the truth, you have to hear suffering, or something along those lines. And I find myself all throughout my ministry, and I guess you could say even now in what I do today, I find myself drawn, and I find often the suffering are drawn to me. Not because of who I am, but because whatever gifts and talents the Lord's given me, I guess sincerity is probably at the top of the list, or so I've been told. I guess I lose all humility points by saying those things.
Not with me, brother.
I want to stand. I want to march. I want to see equality and equanimity. I want to see people understand that if you want to be a true American, then you will accept people how they are. As a matter of fact, I think that was Christ that said that we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And he didn't put a color on it. He didn't put a culture on it. He didn't put a geographical location on it. He said your neighbor. And who is your neighbor? And then he told the story of the Good Samaritan. So we're without excuse. it's not easy to admit some of the things that I know are in my past. Nothing personal, I would say, but actually, it does come down to being personal, because I find even today I get really fired up, and I just want to charge in and make such a change. And I find sometimes I'm just focused on the wrong thing entirely because of my privilege. I know you and I have had a couple brief conversations about privilege. There is such a thing as privilege. I don't care. You can call class privilege, you can wealth privilege, but there's white privilege. I have never, ever faced any extra difficulty because of the color of my skin, or my last name, or my first name, where I come from, what I look like. None of that has ever come up, as far as I know, in ever advancing me or holding me back. And it does for other people, and that's not right.
You have a point there, and I'll share with you today in my presentation of the word for our Sunday morning service. I was dealing with the fifth chapter of Matthew, the Beatitudes,
Hey,
leading to that 13th verse that, we
so
are the salt.
absolutely.
And as I was preparing for that message, you see what the Beatitudes are: to be poor in spirit, to be a peacemaker, to be pure in heart, to hunger and thirst after righteousness. It goes on and on. And then Christ told them about being persecuted and
That's
being
it.
negatively talked about falsely for His sake. And that way they were in line with the prophets who had gone before them. And then in that 13th verse, it just was so striking to me. You're the salt of the earth. You are my flavor in the earth. You are my preservation in the earth. He spoke that to that entire multitude who was gathered on that mountain, but it was especially for those who had been called out to be ministers of the gospel. And
Peculiar
so,
people.
yes, and so in that context, I just found it very difficult to understand if we claim to be that. How in the world can we sit on the sidelines and see what is going on with race relations, and then as a pastor, as a ministry leader,
Mhm.
to be afraid to offend your congregation to say something? And I'm at the point now, I mean, if you have a problem with Black Lives Matter because of all the negative things that you've seen on TV, as much as I could really have a whole show and just talk about that, I'm at the point now saying, listen, call it what you want to call it, right? It don't have to be the Black Lives Matter movement. If that gets the people in your
Civil
church or
rights.
yourself,
This is
call,
civil
call it
rights
right.
still. This is the
Call it
civil
whatever you
rights
want.
movement still. Not part
Yeah,
two, not again. Still. We
still,
still are brothers. We
still.
still not.
And,
It's
and and
it's
that's
it's
and that's
sad.
really my issue. Call it what you want, but if you recognize a problem, will you join us in trying to help out?
Yes.
And this is not politics. You know what I
Not.
mean? And specifically when we talk about the church. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, of course, we see that there is some difficulty um, with the church aligning, and a lot of times that difficulty comes along racial and political lines, and maybe it's even a cultural thing. And I hope and pray that I'm not being offensive to those who need not be offended. But we see many of our Caucasian brothers and sisters in ministry have a real problem,
That's right.
uh, and I'm trying to figure out why. Is it cultural? Is it racial? Is it political? What's the issue?
Um, it's really interesting that you mentioned the Beatitudes. I actually have some notes here about the Beatitudes. And you talk about those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those who are peacemakers. If people of color aren't peacemakers, America would not exist as it did today. I can tell you, I'm fairly certain of that. Um, the meek, shall inherit the earth. I can tell you from my point of privilege, there are not many meek white people we're pretty proud of as far as we've gotten, sadly, by the blood, sweat, and tears of many other races and cultures. I think the problem, the more I look at it, goes right back to that. What's posted and what's preached more often, what's posted in our courthouses, the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Why not the Beatitudes?
Mm.
Why not the blessings of, if you live this way, this is what will happen? Why do we go straight for legalism when Jesus came to tell us more about grace? And I think that, in a way, has been politicized, as almost everything has been at this point, sadly. I think it is a political standpoint. I read something the other day that made a lot of sense to me. It said, as Christians, as we grow in the faith, as we grow up in church, or as we come to church, we're taught at work, when you have an opportunity to shine and to advance, you should, but not at the cost of anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
When you have an opportunity to do something in your own life, whether it's in your family or your something in your private life, you should do it as long as you don't hurt someone else. Do no harm is kind of the teaching we grow up with. Let others esteem others higher than you do yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But the political conversation has been left out of churches for far too long, and no one is teaching that you should esteem others higher than yourself in the political arena. So you go from saying, oh no, please, here, take my seat on the bus, to seeing a certain piece of clothing and going, how can you possibly, what is wrong with you? What's that disconnect? Why is that there? Because we haven't taught our kids the logic and the compassion to say, okay, we can disagree with this person. And believe me, please believe me, there does come a point when a person is just being obstinate and they have just shown themselves to be racist. And even that word ridiculously has been politicized. Oh, well, that's the first thing you say, you're being racist. I'm sorry, you just called a female lady who is also black, who has now been nominated for vice president. You said you had a problem with her policies, but the first thing you said was she was chosen on race and gender. That's racist and sexist. You can't start with one and then tell me I can't call you out on it. It's been politicized, and they say, well, you always call everyone racist. No, I only call people who are using racist language racists, or people who are, by their actions, showing that they are racist. You don't have to say anything to show that you're racist. I don't mean to be preaching to you, sir.
Oh no, no, the audience is listening.
I'm just flow of consciousness a little bit there.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is politics, especially now. I think we have racism has never been dead. Racism has never died. It's never gone away. I think it got quiet and got private. I know I grew up around it, and there was some level of knowing, oh, well, you don't just say these things out loud. But I think it's become I don't know if you'd use the word popular, definitely more prevalent in the last several years, to say things that are either veiled racism or veiled privilege. And so many people don't understand the privilege. But when you come back to why is the movement, I know that's your original question, why is the movement so difficult for many white pastors and even people of faith to accept? Once you put that political thought in the arena, when we've had the moral majority, we've had the religious right, you've had all these groups that have been so heavily influencing and influenced by politics that as soon as you mention Black Lives Matter, the first thing they do is talk about the organization, and then they want to talk about communism and how that goes against everything that's American. And that's not the point. If you can support police officers and still be against police brutality, then you can support Black Lives Matter and still be against some of the tenets that they hold. If you can be disappointed and saddened and protest and rally against our government, but still understand that where the Constitution held to the ideals that it were originally written for, we could support that, but we can't. We have to hold back on certain tenets of that. We can do that with the movement. We can say, you know what? Forget all of that. Listen to these three words: Black Lives Matter. And as you said many times, can you agree with that? Then what are we talking about?
Yeah.
You talked just a moment ago, you said you didn't want to be a stumbling block. My friend, there are a lot of pastors, and I dare say a lot of white pastors, that are being stumbling blocks to their congregations. And I don't say that out of a place of judgment. I say it out of a place of concern. If you don't say something, then you're still saying something. The sin of omission is as bad as the sin of commission.
Yes, sir.
If you don't stand for those who are in the likeness of Christ, then what are you standing for? If you can stand for one particular rule or law or tenet of the faith and say, I can't back down on that. Nobody's asking you to back down on that, but can you add this one to that? Can you march alongside of this and say, this is what we're here for? If my house was burning down, I'm going to grab my kids and I'm going to get out. I'm going to get what's important to me, if I don't have an opportunity to put it out.
Right.
I'm going to get what's important. Listen to me. What's important? This country's on fire right now. We have to grab those around us, those in the image of God, Black, white, tan, Mexican, African, Jamaican, Canadian. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah, this is so true. The more I think about this, and you please help me to understand, it appears that when it comes to our Caucasian brothers and sisters in Christ in the church, there seems to be a disagreement with some portions of what they see as part of the movement / part of the organization. There seems to be a great difficulty in separating the BLM organization
Very much so.
from the BLM movement.
Yes, sir.
Bishop T.D. Jakes did a wonderful job of explaining the difference, and that video was seen by millions. And listen, there's some things about the BLM organization that I very strongly agree with. I mean, excuse me, I very strongly disagree with. But I'm not part of the BLM organization. To be quite honest with you, I don't even know anyone who is part of the BLM organization. I'm absolutely part of the BLM movement. And even in the movement, to be quite honest with you, there are things that I do not agree with, but I don't spend a lot of time with what I don't agree with, because there is so much to do with what I do agree with. And I think that when we're talking about these senior pastors, even some of the subordinate pastors who have multiple advanced degrees and who have been gifted to understand the deep mysteries of the Word of God, it is very difficult for me to accept that you can't understand the difference between the BLM movement and the BLM organization. And it's very difficult for me to understand that you can't get over whatever differences you have to come and help in a problem that is so obviously huge and explosive. And I believe that the church has the answers to the problems.
And
What
have
do
for
you
years.
think about that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We are where we are as a country because the church has failed our country. The church pulled back so far from being socially active because they thought it was being of the world, instead of just in the world. In but not of. I can't tell you how many times I heard that phrase, in but not of, in but not of. But we are of this world. We are human. We all have jobs. We have homes. We have families. We have fears. We have concerns. We have bills. We are of this world. Spiritually, we have been graced with a ticket out of this world that we can connect with something deeper. But just for a minute, to that point, 13 tenets, as I understand it, there are 13 tenets of the organization Black Lives Matter. Here are a few. Restorative justice. Pretty sure churches are for that. Should be, all churches. Empathy. If you don't see empathy in the life of Christ, I don't know what Bible you're reading. Loving engagement. Other than when he was talking to the Pharisees and Sadducees, again, I see that in the life of Jesus. Diversity. That is a step that churches should be supporting more. And I'm seeing it, not as much as we could be, but I'm seeing some diversity. Collective value. Intergenerational. Every church I've been in has been intergenerational. I don't see how we can, and then unapologetically Black, support Black families, Black women, and raise your children in Black villages. How can you be against any of that? The church raised me a lot as a village.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were unapologetically the church. I think I named maybe 8, 9 tenets that if the church can't agree with, we're not going to have a whole lot of a conversation. But again, that is the organization, not the movement. So I guess my point is really, come on, let's have a conversation. Yes. If you could agree with me on one of those 13, then we can have a conversation. We can talk this through.
You know, and maybe you see the same thing I see. The argument that I've heard is that there is some documentation from the organization admitting that they are Marxist, and also there was an alignment with the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
So I do.
Those are some of the tenets I didn't mention. That's definitely right in their 13 tenets. Absolutely.
So I do understand the church's opposition to those 2 tenets. I get it. What I'm saying is this: as far as the movement is concerned, I have not been to any of the BLM movement rallies, meetings, Zoom calls of the groups that I belong to that have had any push whatsoever into Marxism or into open support of the LGBTQ agenda. We love everybody, but I'm talking about pushing that agenda. What we have mostly been talking about is criminal justice reform, social justice, and with a real emphasis.
Justice.
Right.
And I guess the fear comes from, well, if that group can get that, eventually they'll get everything they want. And then what they're really going to want is Marxism. If we are working within a democratic society, well, that's a whole other conversation. But if we are working democratically to go to Board of Supervisors meetings, to hold rallies, to register people to vote for certain candidates, to support certain candidates, to even endorse certain candidates, how is that Marxist? Please explain anything that I have seen. Exactly as you said, I've never seen any push for that. I'm quite sure there are people of color that are queer, trans, and those are 2 of the tenets. Again, it's covered by grace. I have to follow my faith, and like I said, as we were just getting set up, work out your own salvation in fear and trembling.
Yes.
I'm not here to judge you. I can inspect the fruit, but I'm not here to tell you that your faith is any better or worse than mine. I can just try to help you understand the path I'm on. You know, that the old saying, you know, it's two blind beggars helping each other find the bread of life. That's where I am. That's where I've been for years. And it is just that simple. Um, my dad was preaching a sermon a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned that in the Great Commission, when it's talking about as you go, teaching them to obey all things, the phrase in that teaching them to obey all things is actually an agricultural term. It's about growth. How do you get growth? How did the church grow originally? From house to house, sharing in each other's homes, getting to know each other. Like, you come over here. I'm sorry, I didn't vacuum the front room today.
Right.
But if you're here to nitpick about my the dirt on my floor, we're probably not going to have a meaningful conversation. If you're here to see me, open arms. My door is always open. You walk in, you go straight to the fridge, you come sit on the couch, let's chat. You know, if it's something heavy, if it's something light, I'm here for it. But you go back to that. But we got to be on guard. Why? Because they want to take over America. Who? Who wants to take over America?
Right.
And the Americans we got, a lot of them aren't doing such a great job right now. So that's my personal opinion. I don't mean to cause you any extra.
No. I want the audience to hear this, and just for 1 second, audience, thank you so much. I see your comments, and I'm posting just about all of them. Thank you so much. And if you have a question, please make sure you ask the question. Your comments are adding greatly to the conversation. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Pastor Bowman.
As you were saying earlier, it comes back to, I feel mostly right now, everything is so politicized, and it's so hard to pull back from that when you've seen so much hate and so much vitriol and so much bad leadership across the board. It's so hard to pull back from that sometimes and just say, hey, listen, I'm going to support some godly, good people that I know that are not being treated right. What is true religion? To care for orphans and widows. If the meek are going to be blessed, I want to be where they are.
Right.
If the persecuted are going to be blessed, what is blessed? To be happy and to have more than what you started with. I want that. I want the Beatitudes to be what we're memorizing. And then we'll talk about the 10 Commandments, and then we'll compare the two.
Hey, Pastor Bowman, I want to mention something to you. We just had a comment, and I think this is something that we can really chew on. A prominent Fredericksburg pastor told me, point blank, and I'll post this again.
Yes, sir.
A prominent Fredericksburg pastor told me point blank that his church won't partner with any organization that's pro-choice or supports LGBTQ rights. Now, I don't know if that was a black church or a white church. It doesn't matter. And to that,
I would dare say conservative church. Yes, sir.
I won't dare say that they're wrong. But what I'm saying is that the Black Lives Matter movement, number one, is not an organization. There are several grassroots organizations who are involved in the movement. But once again, in the organizations that I belong to, now, of course, there are several people in the organizations who have all kind of opinions for pro-choice, pro-life, and LGBTQ rights and all that. But we didn't march for that. We marched for criminal justice reform.
Yes, sir.
We marched for social change. And once again, it comes back to something that I've been beating the drum on. If the church cannot align itself with an organization because of those things, I'll look in the camera and say, I understand. Doesn't matter whether I agree or not. I understand.
Yes. Yes.
So why don't you start something with like-minded churches?
Yes,
and you don't have to mention anything about LGBTQ.
Okay.
You don't have to mention anything about pro-choice. You can just say, hey, we see that there's a serious problem in this country with the way that Black people are treated, and not just Black people, but people of color also. And we're going to stand up as the church and use our influence in our local and state areas to speak to politicians and convince them to change policies and laws that are unfavorable. And if they don't change the laws, then we'll change their seats.
Yes, sir.
For the life of me, I just don't understand where the great difficulty is in that.
I just want to make one thing clear. I, again, still working out my faith. But, and I don't, again, straight white 40 some odd year old guy sitting here. I don't know what it is to struggle because of who I am or how I was born. So please understand that when I say this, and please correct me if I'm saying anything that is more hurtful than helpful.
Okay.
The church needs to support the movement. The church needs to stand up and say, Black Lives Matter. I'll say this part, and then I'll come back around to address what you just said, which I think you're onto something there. We should be also reaching out in love and grace to people from the LGBTQ community, to people. Churches have prison ministries.
Thank you, sir.
Churches have. I'm sorry. Can I see your voting record? Not yours personally, but
right.
Excuse me, Pastor. Did the man that you voted for? Yes, he's pro-life, but did you see all the other things he did? And you can be blind or ignore or overlook because you believe one is the greater good. Can we do that, please? Can we talk about that, please? Here's what I think when you say what you just mentioned about why doesn't the church? You've got Martin Luther, 95 Theses nailed to the door. Here's what you're doing wrong. We're going to fix it from within. Or we're going to be a little more Protestant and say, you know what, we're going to start something new. Pick one, but pick something and pick it now.
Right.
You're already on the wrong side of history. And when I said earlier, you're being a stumbling block, when you're not teaching the beauty of the creation of God that is in each and every single human being. I don't care what you believe. I don't care where you came from. If you believe Genesis chapter 1 and you believe the New Testament that Jesus died for all, if you want to say that all lives matter, then let's talk about these lives. Let's take a look right now at the lives that are in jeopardy. There are children in cages on our borders, separated from their parents and may never see them again. There are Black men murdered this week, walking away from 2 police officers shot in the back. How? This is the police on their best behavior, knowing the entire country is watching the racial discrepancies. Are you kidding me?
Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage from the church?
I literally have chills right now that I'm outraged. If you are not standing up for those in a less position than yourself, however you want to measure that, whatever words you have to say to make that plain, I am standing for these people because God put them in my life. Can I also say, this is one of my harps I like to pluck every once in a while. What's wrong with being the weaker brother? If I'm strong enough to understand where I am in my faith, and I'm not every day, why can't I take on that weaker brother and help them to become stronger? Same thing goes socially, same thing goes economically, same thing goes across the board. If I can bring another brother or sister along spiritually, I can treat them equally in every other part of life. Yes. And if I can't make equality happen, I can fight for equanimity in my life, in my everyday. Absolutely. I'm going to give you every opportunity I can that I have available to me. I may not be able to do it at your job, but come on over to the barbecue. Right. I may not be able to understand everything that you have experienced in your life, but I'm willing to listen and learn.
Here's another point I want to bring out, Pastor. This is a comment by one of our viewers. You know him, Gary Holland.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Yes, sir. Good man.
Dare I say that churches struggle to publicly unite regarding racial reconciliation because there are church leaders and congregations that have bias and prejudice, and he had a
Ooh,
question mark there. And
bias and
and and
prejudice. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
and,
sir.
and so one thing I want to take that because I know I feel that, and several people that who I've talked to, we feel that. I saw something on social media the other day where a brother, and I don't know if this brother was in Christ or not, but it is a conversation that's going around. And what he said was concerning Black Lives Matter. Uh, if Black people stop being criminals, then they don't have anything to worry about. And there was another Caucasian brother that kind of pointed his finger like, yeah, don't you guys get it? And so we know that conversation is going on the streets. We know the conversation is going on at dinner tables. Is that conversation right there going on in churches?
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's not, and it's. You want to victim blame? Oh wait, Jesus said not to do that. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, if he's not like you, if he's beat up, wounded, it doesn't matter. I cannot stand victim blaming. And if you really want to get down to statistics, I didn't plan for that today. I don't have it right in front of me. But you want to talk about the same type of neighborhood, the same type of lifestyle, the same type of economic situation, you're going to see crime be very, very specific. And then we can do a whole show on crime if you want to, but give me some time to finish up my homework, because that, that word and definition and how it's used as a political tool and a weapon, that needs to be addressed. You want to talk about some restorative justice, we've got to get on that. But I understand there's much to do, and that's a whole nother front to the war that needs to be fought.
Right. What I mean is, do you hear amongst our Caucasian brothers and sisters in the church that kind of talk? If they would just stop committing crime,
yes,
maybe they wouldn't have such.
Yes,
and so it goes back
not
to
a conversation
a suspicion
about how we shouldn't talk about that and how to address it. No, that is not happening.
Right.
Am I hearing people that profess? Am I seeing people that profess on social media saying, "Well, if they just wouldn't have done this"? I'm sorry. What's the police's job? To police, not to execute. What happened to innocent until proven guilty? Just because you think you know, and the latest that I saw from the George Floyd case, you want to victim blame and victim shame. Those guys weren't squeaky clean, but we don't talk about that much. You want to talk about, you look at Brock Turner, who is proven to rape that young woman. And what did they talk about? They talked about his sports statistics. They didn't call him a criminal. They didn't call him a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I know he was white, and he got out. And no, that conversation is happening. Unfortunately, there are, and it's not just generational. It's not just one group or one generation that's saying, well, if the crime went down, then they would see this change. That's absolutely right, Pastor Holland. Where you choose to get your news will definitely bias you. I believe everyone has prejudices.
Yes.
You see something a certain way, and you're just like, oh, nope, I'm not with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fight to get over that. Bias, that starts to get a little more serious when you let that prejudice become something more that changes your decisions and your behaviors. And then when you base that all in the color of a person's skin or their culture, now you're a racist. And people go, well, I've never told a racist joke in my life. No, but I saw the way that you treated that person. And then I saw the way that you treated the next customer. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the only difference I saw, and it wasn't just education. And if we can be honest about that, You want to talk about levels of crime and levels of education. You want to talk about redlining. You want to talk about all these other things where people of color for years, for decades, have lost opportunities at wealth and increasing their lives. And you want to talk about Black Wall Street. You want to talk about Tulsa. What do you want to talk about?
Right.
I
There's a
know
lot
you
to talk
know.
about.
I know you know. I know you know. But
Oh yeah.
your question is: are people in the church, white people specifically, or more white-led churches? Is this well? If they would just do what they were told. Let me say this: if a man were to come in my front door unannounced, broken in, and is holding some kind of weapon and yelling, I don't care what time of day, he's going to have a fight on his hands. I'm going to resist whatever he is doing. Should it turn out he's law enforcement and he has to hold me, my body, I'm getting up there a little bit, and my body only bends in certain ways. So you know what? I'm going to fight against my body moving that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to kneel on my neck, there's all kinds of resistance.
Gonna be problems.
Yeah. How is that even a charge? Everybody is going to resist arrest. Nobody. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. If you think, oh yeah, I'll just go stand over there. Let me tell you, you think you can get out of the car and walk back to an officer that just pulled you over? That's probably because you're white. And you've done it before. Or you've mouthed off and you don't live in fear that this could end up as the end of your life. I've never had that. I think I hate being pulled over. I can't stand it. But there's something going on.
Right.
But again, I think there's a lot to, and when you say defund the police, look at the budgets, look at the militarization. We could take some of that money and put it somewhere else. If my tail lights out, let a police officer pull me over and then have the tow company come and replace it right there on the side of the road. How is that not money well spent? That's a community service. If I come out of, I get in a fight with someone that I care about very much, and I'm driving erratically, and the police officer pulls me over, and I'm just openly upset. Why not have someone that's actually trained to deal with mental issues, a counselor of some kind that could meet the officer there, and
you should not die after that encounter.
Absolutely,
and it's happening.
It's happening, and it's happening disproportionately to Black and brown people. It absolutely is.
Let me say this. I want to make sure the audience understands this. Now, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, I have heard so many voices in the movement, including mine, who say, hey, listen, we wish that another term had been used instead of defund the police, because people take that and just go crazy with it.
Right.
We don't want to see the abolishment of police forces.
Right.
We don't want to see entire police budgets wiped out.
No.
What we want to see is, like you said, I don't know how many police departments really need Black Hawks and tanks. Yes, police departments, especially in high crime areas, you need special weapons. You need SWAT teams. We understand that. But we need to reimagine policing. That's really what we're saying.
But would you, though? That's my question. Would you? There's a really interesting show. It used to be on, I think it was on Netflix. I don't know. It might have been on another channel. But it was called, I want to say it was called Ernie and Joe, but it was Crisis Cops was the main thing. And their whole thing was like, I can handle this in such a different way. Like, would you even need a SWAT team if the police didn't have so much put on them? Maybe you would, but maybe not every community would. Maybe the state would need one, or I don't know. I don't have a vision for it. I'm not called to be a politician. I'm not called to.
It's a conversation that we need to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. What if there were these other organizations that were better equipped so the police could just do their job? They could serve and protect. They could come out here to the playground, check on all my kids, make sure there's nobody pervy or uninvited hanging around, instead of having to worry about whether they have to go to an extra training. Why do you have to go to a training to know that you shouldn't kill someone? I understand things get escalated, and that's human nature. We will escalate and we will defend ourselves. But if the person doesn't have a weapon, and they're not about to harm anyone else. If a person is walking away from you or running away from you, didn't you just pull them over? Don't you know their home address? Don't you know where they're going to show up eventually?
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I know I'm
So,
all over the map.
no,
I appreciate the grace.
These are things that we need to talk about. Here's a question I really want to ask you. For a man such as yourself, who has very obviously, to me and to my audience, you've seen the light when it comes to racial disparities, uh, you know, racial injustice, racial prejudice, racial bias. You've seen it, and you understand it. It is obvious that you understand it. How difficult is it for you to have this conversation with people in your circle, whether they be family members or friends, church members, co-workers, who also are of the Caucasian persuasion, who may not be quite where you are? How difficult is that?
I have a rather eclectic collection of friends, so it depends on the group I'm in. Honestly, as a person, as I can be a father and a son and a training and service coordinator, I have different roles. In my groups of friends, I have different roles. In my family, I play a different role. With my family, honestly, there has been some difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I was very active in some very down in Richmond, the taking down of the Confederate statues. I think it needs to happen. You want to put them in a museum? That's fine. That's where mistakes belong, so people can learn from them. Put them in the books. Get them out of my face. I don't need that, and I will stand for that. And I don't mean to disparage anyone that feels that is part of their heritage, but let's be honest, what that heritage was, it was in support of slavery. We need to move past it. We need to either focus on the culture that you had before that, whether you came from somewhere in Europe or I don't know what else you need to focus on, but pretending like Confederate statues aren't offensive, or the slave block that was downtown. I was so happy to see that go. And it is a part of history. And it's absolutely true that if we don't understand our history, we're doomed to repeat it. Then I have other friends who agree wholeheartedly, but would say, "Hey, can we stop talking about that right now? I just want to have a good time."
Right.
And then I have other friends that say, "Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah, let's march. Yeah, let's go." And then I have some family and friends who I don't speak with anymore because, and probably going back to what Pastor Gary said about where you choose your news, there is a trick of rhetoric right now that is being used across the board. It's not one side or the other. I would say, honestly, it is one side more than the other, but both sides use it, where you just keep changing the topic and you never actually accept an answer, whether it's logical or illogical. If I say, they say, "Well, what about the crime rate in Chicago?" I'll say, "What part of Chicago?"
There you go.
Okay, let's put that there. Okay, now let's compare that to another city that's similar with a different mix of cultures. Look at the crime rate. Not that much different. So, and then they're like, "Well, what about this?" And they're on to the next thing. It's like, wait, you didn't finish that first argument that you started. That we need to go back to logical conversations, and it's okay to have an argument. It's okay to disagree. You think Jesus and the disciples saw eye to eye all the time? It's in there. It's why do you think those guys were called the sons of thunder? Just because they had loud voices? I got a feeling that he had to drag them, kicking and screaming a couple times because they thought it should be a certain way, and Jesus is like, "Nope, that's not the way grace works." So when it comes to who I'm speaking with, I'd say more often than not, it comes to a level of discomfort. And it's up to each individual person, especially, as you said, as white people that I interact with a lot. What level of discomfort are you willing to step into? And are you willing to understand that if you want to claim faith and you want to hear all these sermons on how you have to step outside your comfort zone, that isn't just talking about how it's hard to go to another country. That isn't just talking about how it's hard to help that neighbor that's, drinks all night and wrecked into your car. No, your discomfort level starts with owning up to your privilege. It's not that you were overtly racist to your neighbor. It's not that you said inappropriate things. It's that you have a perspective. I'm trying to learn as much as I can to get past this perspective that everything's just going to be hunky-dory. I'm going to make it through somehow. That's not the case for most people in America. How do you have that conversation and understand, no, it may not be directly your fault, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't fight to change it. I think one by one, just like we're doing now, to anybody that'll listen, even if you give me 2 minutes, just listen. Black lives matter. They absolutely do. Brown lives matter. Children in cages matter. All these things are wrong. And if you can tell me the murder or mistreatment of any human being was justified, we have to have some kind of conversation. Does that mean I'm against capital punishment? I'm not getting into that right now. Does that mean I'm against other types of punishment? Well, we definitely need to redo our prison system from top to bottom 100%.
That's a whole nother conversation, and that falls under the criminal justice reform, the prison industrial complex. Oh man, we could talk a whole nother hour on that. Absolutely. And once again, Pastor Bowman, that's why it's so frustrating when we hear that deafening silence from some portions of the church, because there are so many issues that are so easy to agree on that this is just wrong.
Yes.
And I think that we have so many differences, but here's the deal. I do see light at the end of the tunnel. Last Sunday we had that one church event.
Yes.
And it was streamed, and I was part of the audience in the stream. And I'll tell you, just the night before, I had become so frustrated with this until I said to myself, I didn't say it to anybody else, I said it to myself, these jokers are not my brothers. You can't be my brother and see this and not be moved to do something and say something. I'm glad that I didn't say anything, because that was my issue. It was a point of frustration for me.
Absolutely. You're human.
But I heard a sermon, the senior pastor at our church, Apostle Larry Brown, preached a sermon Sunday morning that helped me. And then to witness the one church event on Sunday afternoon, and to see the conglomeration of pastors from different racial backgrounds, different churches, to very openly pray and admit certain things, to say that, yes, there was a problem, to openly say there's a problem. And even though this meeting or this way to deal with it may be imperfect, there are imperfections in what we're doing. At the bottom line, we've at least identified and openly said that there is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And there's already been a follow-up event plan that helped me to get back on track. And it goes back to what we were saying at the top when I was talking about the sermon that came forth this morning, being the salt. You see, if we're not careful, we get so frustrated with this thing that we'll lose our savor. We'll lose our ability to be
does salt do?
Preserve.
It preserves. What else does it do?
It cleans.
Cure.
That's right. That's right.
You ever pour salt on a cut? It stings. Guess where we are? Guess we're back to discomfort.
Yes.
Listen to me. Listen to me. White people, white churches, my Caucasian brothers and sisters. Listen. If you're going to be the salt, if you're going to listen to the salt of the earth, there's going to be some sting. There needs to be healing, racial healing, cultural healing, justice, the whole entire justice system and the way that it's been used against Black and brown people is a travesty in our country.
You're so right. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
No, I know your frustration from my end. Again, I can't know all of your frustrations, my brother. There's so much. I'm being as honest as I can. I still struggle with my privilege, knowing when I get so gung ho to go at something and I missed the point. I missed the point.
But at least
I'm like
you're
that junkyard
present.
dog, I'm just ready to bite, and maybe I'm not biting the right person when I go after it. But sometimes you just hear something and you go, that just cannot stand. It just cannot stand. If you can't see that's wrong, then we got nothing else to talk about. I am so sick and tired of hearing some of the garbage that is spouted. Again, please keep beating this drum. Please keep beating this drum. There is a Black Lives Matter movement. Call it the civil rights movement. Call it
whatever you want.
I don't call what you care. I don't care what you call it. But if you can't stand next to me on a line or carry a sign to say, my Black brother, Carl Armstrong, matters, I don't want to see him murdered in his home. I don't want to see him murdered I don't want to see him murdered by police. I don't want to see him murdered by some extremist from wherever they're from and whatever color skin they happen to have. You're my brother. If you were to fall and get injured, my blood could replace your blood and vice versa. How in the world can we ever look at each other and say, I hate that person based on one simple thing? It's like saying, I don't like you because of your eyelashes. I may be jealous of your eyelashes, but I can't hate you because of it. That's silly. It's that ridiculous. And yet here we are in this world where it's such a prevalent thing, especially in our country. But it comes back to what else the salt does. The salt cures, it preserves. In my mind, I'm thinking that links back to, you don't see that a whole lot anymore. I have friends that I gave them some Virginia country ham. I'm like, man, that is some kind of good eating. Absolutely it is. You know why? Because of the salt. I had to educate them.
Right.
That's what it's good for. It's not just
it's cured.
Exactly. It's cured. It's education. It's so important. Telling our church members when we get the opportunity, listen to me, we can, like you said, if we want to come outside and just say this is a church group that supports racial and ethnic and social equality and equanimity, then start that group. Please start that group. Start it now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till next Sunday. If your pastor doesn't want it, start it in your home. Be the first church all over again. But if for a moment you think something along the lines of Martin Luther, that you could come up with 13 other tenets and work from within the Black Lives Matter movement and say, okay, we have to have these conversations, but maybe we could change the narrative that the world sees about us, then do that. Do something. Do so. Absolutely, we're the body of Christ. Absolutely, we are. Whatever your part is, play your part. But that's also about education.
That's right.
That's also about education. We have to educate the next generation. This next generation is definitely ready to rise up. But
they're here. They're on the scene.
They're so full of so many ideas that they're almost ready to storm the gates without any wisdom. And I got to say, what was it? I think it was Billy Sunday used to say, that'll make you ready to swing over hell on a rotten grapevine and shoot the devil in the eye with a water gun. I'm ready to go with them sometimes. Absolutely, I am. But other times, there's something to be said for wisdom. There's something to be said for stepping back and saying, let's talk. Let's set this straight before this goes somewhere it doesn't need to go. All of that needs to happen, and it comes from education. The church needs to educate people. I said this on your other program. I'll say it till the day I die. 5:00 Sunday evenings growing up, we had discipleship training. And discipleship training in the churches I grew up in, it was why we were right and everybody else was wrong and probably going to hell. And I understand theology is very important. I understand where you stand on topics is very important. Where you stand on tenets, where you stand on commandments, where you stand on the Beatitudes, where you stand on the virgin birth. We go through the whole creed, whatever you want to say, I understand. But what did God do when he came as Jesus Christ? He became human. Emmanuel, God with us.
Yes.
That's where the education starts. Yes. He became one of us. He suffered frustrations. He wept. He sobbed when his friend died, but he brought him back to life. He is supposed to be what we call ourselves, little Christ, Christian. And how do you not support your brothers and sisters in the body of Christ? How do you not stand up and say, hey, don't say that again and don't act like that again? Or we're going to have to go back to Matthew and go through the restorative process of church members. What happened to that? Going to each other one-on-one. I cannot tell you how many times, and you've probably experienced it as well, where people skip steps. What was recommended. They go
and then wonder why the results are so jacked up.
To the pastor, or they go straight to the church. They're like, hey, why didn't you just come to me?
Yeah, we could have resolved this one-on-one.
You were uncomfortable. Well, guess what? This whole thing is about discomfort. If we're going to be salt, there's going to be a little sting in these wounds that we have to make. There are wounds. America is wounded. The church is wounded. Salt is here to cure and heal. We have to educate. Right here, I appreciate you so much. Iron sharpening iron. We need more of that. We need so much more of that. And there will be people, and I got to be honest with you, go back 3-4 years, I was not living for the Lord. I'm not proud of that. I'm grateful and blessed to be where I am today. I didn't deserve it the first time, and I certainly didn't deserve a second shot. And it's so interesting to see in my life, you get those little reminders from Facebook, and you find little notes around the house to see cycles of where you do this deep dive into your faith, and then you back off for a little while, and it's just, you kind of just, doing the motions, and then you're like, it's almost like going to the gym. I used to tell my kids all the time I was teaching them, you're like, man, I'm at the gym all the time here at the church. I'm lifting the weights. I'm learning the scripture. You guys come here on the weekends, and I'm expected to give you this workout routine that helps you the rest of the week. It's about education. We got to educate. Yes, the upcoming generation, but brother, we got to have a big conversation about the generation that's in power right now.
Oh yeah, but I tell you what,
especially in the white churches,
I think accountability is coming. We're going to wrap here in just a moment. We're over an hour and 7 minutes, and we're very grateful to our audience. I tell you what, Pastor Bowman, I could just talk to you all day, and we definitely got to schedule. We got to schedule to come back. But here's something that I want to say. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to let Pastor Bowman have the last word on our conversation today. I think there are two major issues. Now, this is from my perspective. I don't claim to be right. This is my perspective, okay? Seems to be two major issues when it comes to some of our conservative churches and why they won't join in the movement. And once again, you can call the movement what you want to call it. If Black Lives Matter is causing you and your church some problems, rename it to whatever you want to rename it. Just do the work. It seems to be the LGBTQ issue and also the issue of pro-life, pro-choice. This is what I would say to you, church. Those of you who are stand out of this movement because of those two issues. I don't think there's anything wrong with being pro-life. I don't think there's anything wrong with being an advocate for the unborn. But I think there's some incompleteness there. You also need to be as strong an advocate for those who have been birthed, but were not birthed into a very pleasant situation and now are struggling. Jesus Christ specialized in those type of people. And we see example upon example of how he dealt with those type of people in scripture. And when it comes to the LGBTQ agenda, I also understand if you don't want to support that agenda, I get it. But we ought to love everyone and show the love of Christ to everyone. And the question for you is, what are you going to do about those LGBTQ members who are already sitting in your pews and on your pulpits? Because they're there. Do not fool yourself. They're there. So once again, I understand if you don't support those things. I have no argument against that. What I do have is something to say to you, that it is an incomplete stance. And if we're going to be the salt of the earth, I said to the church today, I want to be to Christ, just like when I'm cooking and I open my seasoning cabinet and I'm able to pull certain things so I can get certain flavors into whatever it is I'm cooking. I want to be that salt shaker named Carl, that Christ can pull out and season anything, even a piece of meat that's been in a dark, cold place and hasn't had a lot of exposure. I don't want Christ to look at me and say, I don't want to be saying to Christ, I don't want you to put me there because I don't like that place and I don't like those people. We have to be his salt, his flavor, his seasoning, his preservation, his cleaning, and his cure to the earth. And I don't think we have the ability to choose where he spreads us. I don't want to lose the flavor and only be good to be trodden under men's feet. Feet, excuse me, I said feet, but I mean men's feet. That's where I am. And I hope that what I've said has been understood. Pastor Bowman, I give you the last word on this.
Well, sir, let me first say thank you so much for having me back again. It's been an honor speaking with you. Like you said, I could talk for hours with you, just as easy as drinking water. I really do appreciate the opportunity. And maybe if I had a choice, maybe I'd be garlic salt, get a little extra flavor in there.
There you go.
I need a little more flavor. I know I'm of the Caucasian persuasion, but I need a little more flavor.
Amen.
But as to what you're saying, that's absolutely right. And I believe Pastor Gary mentioned earlier, a lot of what we see, bias, prejudice, staying logical, it goes out the window when emotion comes in. And I think the only cure for that is humility. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers for what to do with the police departments and police forces. I don't have all the answers for our political mess that we're in across the board on both sides of the aisle. I don't have all the answers of what to do for school, for COVID. I don't have all the answers of how this conversation gets to take longer strides. This movement is making strides, and I am honored to be a part of it.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Bowman. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. Audience, we thank you. You have been so wonderful today with your comments. Pastor Gary Holland said that y'all were wearing my clicker out. You did. But what a pleasant experience. And these type of topics, I can imagine that I'm sure someone has probably been upset. Someone has probably been offended. That was not our intention. But if truth and passion about this subject matter offends you, I would suggest that you look in the spiritual mirror. You may very well, even unintentionally, you may be part of the problem. Heart for the Community Initiative is a nonprofit organization. I didn't run any of the banners. The conversation got so good, I forgot about them. But we're a nonprofit organization located in Northern Virginia, headquartered in Dumfries. We've operated out of Prince William County, Spotsylvania County, Stafford County. We normally work through major events. So the whole thing with the interview series came out of the restrictions from COVID-19, and we wanted to keep the community informed. And we thought this was a great way to do it, since we couldn't get hands and feet in the community during phase one. We stayed in phase one. Even phase two was restrictive. So we did that. And I'm so glad that we have, because it has morphed into something bigger than what I imagined, Pastor Bowman. So we're very thankful for all of you who have become followers and friends of Heart for the Community. And if you have not already liked and or followed Heart for the Community, now's your opportunity to do so. And if you go to our Facebook page, you will see the great wealth of these type of interviews that we have conducted on all kind of various topics. So anything that you're looking for, you will probably see when you go look at our video catalog. We hope that you have enjoyed Pastor Bowman. And at some point, I'm going to ask him to come back, and I hope he'll say yes.
Right now, I'll tell you yes. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. He's already said yes. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate your time. You've been with us now for a little over an hour and 15 minutes. We do appreciate your time. We do appreciate your attendance here. Pastor Bowman, before I let you go, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to say, sir?
So many things, I could ramble on beyond even this, but I just, again, thank you for the opportunity. My white brothers and sisters, church leaders, don't be a stumbling block. If your heart hurts at that, you know the cure. It's humility at the feet of Jesus. Learn from the master. Love your brothers and sisters. Teach your congregation. Teach your kids. Black lives matter.
Amen. I thank you for that. Willie Counselor said we need some offensive people in the body of Christ. All right, Brother Counselor. Well, thank you so much. We're going to sign off now. Once again, you've been with us for another installment of the Heart for the Community Initiative interview series. Want to give you one more announcement for those who are still holding on. On September 12th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Dumfries at Cecil Garrison Park, Heart for the Community, along with PW Perspective, along with a few other groups that I can't remember right now, so y'all don't be offended with me because I don't have the flyer in front of me. We're doing an event at Cecil Garrison Park in Dumfries, September 12th, Saturday, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's going to be a huge voter drive. We're driving voting registration, voter education. There'll be several elected officials who will be speaking. Also, there'll be a comedian there, comedian Petey Ray Red out of Portsmouth, Virginia. If you guys have not been introduced to him yet, please go to his Facebook page. And when you see how funny he is, you will want to come out with us. So if you go to the Heart for the Community Initiative Facebook page, if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see the event, you'll see the flyer. And we're going to get it tonight before the sun goes down. It'll be on the Spirit of Truth Deliverance Church website also. We'll be getting the information to you. Once again, Pastor Bowman, thank you. And thank you, audience. Until next time, may God bless you and may heaven smile upon you. Good evening.
Be blessed.